Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. Every so often, I get someone asking, are there any updates on the Red Heifers? And I'm sure if there were, you would probably find out about it before I did. But I've been wondering this myself. I did a search today. I came across this recent article by the Jewish Star. So I want to read this. I also want to point you to the places where you can go to find authoritative updates on the Red Heifers. And these are the same sources that I would go to. And I also want to look into, like, does this even matter to us as members of the church? I'm not sure that it does. It may or it may not. A lot of times there's questions about, the sons of Levi and them having the priesthood and the resumption of animal sacrifices and the temple in Jerusalem, the sons of Aaron, just like the whole bunch of stuff that I think people get confused about. And so I'm hoping that I can clarify that with the quotes that I've collected so far. But just really quick, before we get into this, if you want to find updates about this, I think two of the best places to go. I would, if it comes from like another source, like some evangelical YouTube channel or something like that, I would take it with a grain of salt. I think the best place that you can go is, for one, go look at Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz's channel. You can also go to Israel 365. I should have had this pulled up too. Israel 365. So he is a writer or a journalist for Israel 365. I would go here to Biblical News, okay? Or just go directly to his channel and subscribe. Please subscribe. I'll put the link for his channel in the description box below. But he's an Orthodox Jew. He's been on my show before. I've interviewed him a couple times. He's in contact with the people that run the Temple Institute. They're the ones that are going to perform the ceremony. Like, he has direct contact with them and knows what's going on. And if something happened, it would show up. I'm sure he would do a video about it on his YouTube channel or write an article in for Israel 365 News. I got a lot of questions answered when I did this interview with him. This was just a couple months ago, April 4th. So check him out, watch this video, because I got all my questions answered about how it's supposed to happen, what's needed, and, on and on and on, because there's just so many questions about the mitzvah or the commandment of the red heifer, like sacrifice. One interesting thing. So the day before I did this interview, the Temple Institute put out this post. I have it pulled up in Instagram, where they found a Cohen, or a priest. So he's a descendant of Aaron. So you have the tribe of Levi, that during Old Testament times, they had the priesthood, the Levitical priesthood. But in addition to that, within the tribe of Levi, you had the sons of Aaron that were the priests, and so that's where we get the term Aaronic priesthood, Levitical priesthood. So the Jews have kept track of that lineage, and he is a priest or a Cohen of the lineage of Aaron. And they've been having a hard time finding priests that are kosher to carry out the sacrifice, because there's different things that can make you ritually impure. Part of that is being born in a hospital, because you could have potentially come in contact with a dead body. Not that you touched a dead body, but you were within the vicinity of a dead body, which makes you ritually impure in Judaism. So they found him. And what's interesting is before I did this interview with Adam, he was like, no, it's not going to happen anytime soon. And his big hang up was that they were waiting to find a kosher Cohen, or a Cohen that was fit to perform the red heifer ceremony. So he changed his tune and now believes that it'll happen. I want to say that he was thinking that it would happen this year, by the end of this year. So anyway, that was an interesting development. And then you could also check, if you're not already, follow the Temple Institute. Again, they're the ones that have reconstructed all the vessels and instruments for the temple. They have plans for the third temple. And they're the ones that would perform this ceremony. They're the ones that are in charge of the red heifers. So, but They haven't, as far as I can tell, I just did a quick search. I did Control F and then search for Heifer on their Facebook page. And it seems that the last time that they posted about the Red Heifers was May 21st. So it's been a while. Here's Adam's channel again. Okay, so again, I want to read, this is like the newest, quote unquote update on the Red Heifers. I did learn a thing or two here, so found a couple interesting things. And then, like I said, I want to look at our church and our doctrine, and does this even matter to us, and how is animal sacrifice going to resume? We'll get into that toward the last half of the video. Okay, before we do that, I want to remind you, I've partnered with Trevor Stevens. He has this business called Forge, Build, and Design. He's one of my subscribers. He sent me one of these wood carvings. This is him right here with his wife. And he does a bunch of different things. It's not just church things. There's some like Disney and cowboys, medical, stuff like that. But the church carvings that he does, like he has these carvings of Christ, which is really neat. He also does temples. I myself am going to get the Kirtland Temple wood carving. And then he also has one for the family proclamation. So in the description box of my video, I go down, click on the description box. There's this code Christian Homestead 10, and that gives you 10% off. And I have the link for his website right there, forgebuildanddesign.com. So please support him. It also supports my channel. And that would be great if you're interested in these wood carvings. Okay, so let's read what I have highlighted from the Jewish Star. This is from 7 days ago, June 10th, 2024. Shiloh. When a small conference was held this spring, oh my gosh, when a small conference was held this spring in Israel's biblical heartland on the laws related to the red heifer, both Hamas and Hezbollah posted the ad for the event on their Telegram pages. Months earlier, a Hamas spokesman in Gaza had chosen the 100th day of the Israel-Hamas war to report the relocation of 5 red heifers to Israel from Texas as the reason for the October 7th massacre. And I've done a video about that. I've also tracked down the articles where Hezbollah has talked about it. Like, it seems like it's a very real concern for them, because there's certain, so there are some sacrifices that can be done without the red heifer. And I'm not like an expert in Jewish law, but there's like different types of sacrifices. I think one is called like time-bound sacrifices and another one is not. So whatever the case, there are certain sacrifices that can take place right now, but in order to like properly run the temple, they have to have the red heifers first, the ashes from the red heifers, because that's how the Jews as a nation, when they ascend to the Temple Mount, that's how they are cleansed, how they're made ritually pure. They have to have the ashes of the red heifer, which is like mixed into this like solution, has to be sprinkled on them, and then they're ritually pure, and then they can enter into the temple complex. So it seems like these Islamic groups, they have like some sense of this, that this is a really important thing for the Jews to move forward with their plans to build the temple. Of course, there's many other complications that they'll have to overcome in order to get to that point, other than just the red heifers, but this is a big one. They haven't been able to find a red heifer that's kosher. In all these years, like almost 2,000 years, the last time that they had one was a couple thousand years ago. In Jewish tradition holds, this is from Maimonides, which was a Jewish sage, that there had only been 9 red heifers in Jewish history, and then the 10th one would be sometime now in our time, before the appearance of Mashiach or Messiah. So this is kind of a big deal for everybody. Okay. Later on it says, in the meantime, so this is the most updated thing that I have right here. In the meantime, 3 of the 5 animals who are routinely checked by a group of rabbis for any blemishes that would strip them of their ritual eligibility, such as 2 hairs of a different color, have been disqualified. So 3 of the 5 disqualified. And that's actually not new. I think that may have been the case when I was talking to Adam. I can't remember, but I already knew that before today. Okay. It will be bred. So the ones that are disqualified will be bred in the coming weeks via artificial insemination to produce more promising offspring, she said. Feasting on hay and feed in their upgraded lodgings, the 5 affable calves, aptly named Tikva, which means hope, Gula, which means redemption. And by the way, that's a really key word and concept right there. Sometimes it's referred to as final redemption, or what we would refer to as essentially the second coming and the millennium. They call it the final redemption in the Messianic age. It's like the equivalent. It's like, it's like these parallel concepts. So yeah, it is pretty fitting that they would name one of these calves Gula. And then Segula, which means virtue, Tekiah, which means rebirth, and Nekama, which means comfort. We're glad to see the sprightly Indiana farmer as he entered their barn last Thursday. Born Traeger knows them all by name and keeps a small notepad in his shirt pocket with sketches of the distinct characteristics of each. Yeah, this article talks about this Indiana farmer. I guess he has Amish ancestry, but he's a Noahide, which I don't know if he's like still Christian, but a Noahide is one that keeps the 7 Noahide laws. This is like a Jewish concept that the Gentiles only have to obey these like 7 Noahide laws, whereas the Jewish nation has 613 that they have to follow. But anyway, I'm not too interested in the farmer, but just so you know. Okay, the calves too have had an unusual story. Born in Texas to a special breed of cows known as Red Angus, they were only a month or so old when their owner connected with a group of people from Jerusalem who had put an ad out in the U.S. Farmers magazine in search of the elusive Red Heifer, which hadn't been seen in 2 millennia. They were offering a whopping $15,000 per cow. The going rate was $300 to $1,000. And of course, that'd be for like calves, not full-grown cows, according to Shapira. After getting a deluge of replies, the group first conducted tests across the Atlantic via Zoom to see if the cows qualified before traveling to the Lone Star State to perform the intricate checks in person. One farm was of particular interest. The Christian owner told them by phone that he had indeed chosen the breed, thinking that they could potentially serve in the temple. In the end, 5 female calves who, because of COVID, had not been branded. Now, just really quick, I feel like I've seen that before, but this is the first time I'm like really realizing that if this whole thing is significant in any sort of way, well, it seems like COVID is what made it possible. We talk about all the time COVID and how that affected the church, and on the Jewish side, however this plays out, it seems like COVID played a hand with that as well. Now, again, I don't believe that this is necessary to build the temple in Jerusalem. We know that there will be a temple in Jerusalem. Again, I'm about to get into that in just a minute, but it doesn't seem to me, based on what general authorities have said, that this matters, because it comes down to priesthood. It comes down to Christ having come and fulfilled the Mosaic law and many other things. However, even though this may not have any meaning per se doctrinally for the church, if they sacrifice the red heifers, get the ashes, it may move this war into the next stage. It may really, really upset everybody, and they may feel more urgency to stop Israel from building the temple. So I feel like it could be significant in that way. I've also discussed the idea that it could be that, like, as they're trying so hard to perform this mitzvah, we've studied in the Institute student manual that the red heifer was a symbol of Christ. Red for his blood. And the whole idea of ritual purity and impurity, how the ashes of the red heifer purify the people, just like how Christ and his atonement can purify you through repentance and baptism and all the rest of it, receiving the Holy Ghost and keeping your covenants, going to the temple, all that stuff. So I could see it being that when he comes to them on the Mount of Olives, he can be like, nope, I am the red heifer. I have always been the red heifer this entire time. 2,000 years that you have not had a red heifer. I am here. I am the red heifer. Does that make sense? That'd be a very poignant way for things to go. But anyway, it's interesting. COVID, this kind of like unlikely thing that happened that really affected the world and the church in many ways, also affected the Jews as far as the red heifers go. So in the end, 5 female calves who, because of COVID, had not been branded, which would have disqualified them by religious law, were selected. Then, to circumvent restrictions on the import of livestock, they were granted special dispensation to fly to Israel as pets in first-class luggage. Despite the stir, their presence in Israel has created abroad. The idea that they would actually be ritually sacrificed is presently far-fetched. Even if a small group of rabbis is studying the relevant religious laws. And then it doesn't really explain the rationale why the Jewish Star website thinks that it's not likely. And that's one thing that I wanted to talk about. You know, I had a spreadsheet. I'm not going to pull it up, but I had a spreadsheet where I was keeping track of the age of all the different reported heifers, because there were a bunch of different sources saying, oh, these heifers are this old, and oh, here's a couple more that are this old. And so I put it all in a spreadsheet. And at this point, they are all of age at this point. Now, June 17th, 2024, they're all of age. And I had always thought, you know, I would think that they would want to do it as quickly as possible because it's been so hard for them to find a red heifer. So like once you have it, you don't want to risk hairs changing colors. You know, at this point, they have them. They have 2 of them ready to go. So I feel like you're pushing your luck if you wait too long. And if you have this Cohen, now I don't know if he's accepted to do it. You know, they're not going to like force him to do it. He looks happy. But the thing is, I feel like time is of the essence, and I would not be surprised. I think the Jewish Star is wrong. I think that it is, excuse me, I think that it is likely that it's going to happen. But things have been really quiet lately. There hasn't been much talk about it. And maybe that's because, you know, they don't want anybody getting in the way because there's been security concerns. They were thinking, I think they were considering Passover being the time that they would do it. That's one of the questions that I asked Adam, and I think he said it would not happen during Passover, but it very well could happen afterwards. But whatever the case, I don't think that they would want to wait too long, because if they lose these ones, then how much longer are they going to have to wait to get more? It's hard. So under these circumstances, when things have like really quieted down, I'm wondering if maybe it'll happen soon. That's just pure speculation. Maybe they would want to wait until the war is over, if it ends, but that's like another risk that you take. Like, is this war close to being over? I don't think so. I'm sure that they don't think so. So I don't know, but like when things are quiet, I feel like that's when something may happen. And frankly, I think that's when major events having to do with the second coming will happen. Regardless of what appearance you're thinking of, Adam Amen, being caught up, coming with him to the Jews, I think that those things would happen at a time that you wouldn't expect, because that's one of the key concepts of the second coming, that he comes at a time that you think not. So anyway, I'm not going to read the rest of this. Okay, so let's get into does this matter? Does this matter to us? Does it matter? Okay, so first I want to address the idea of the Jews having the priesthood. I think there's some members of the church that think that they do. They don't. So in Old Testament times, the priesthood was restricted to the tribe of Levi, like we talked about earlier. In addition, within the tribe of Levi, you had the sons of Aaron that had, they were in the office of priest. Okay, so you had priests, and below that, you had the rest of the tribe of Levi, which were the Levites. And so correspondingly to our own day, you have our priests of the Aaronic priesthood, right? And then below that, you have teachers and deacons. And interestingly, teachers and deacons essentially have similar responsibilities that the Levites would have had, such as teaching in the temple, or doing menial tasks like packing up, for example, with the tabernacle, packing up the tabernacle for transport. Just like how we have deacons and teachers today that put up chairs or set up chairs or whatever. They do things like that. But anyway, the Jews no longer have the priesthood. I think a lot of people get confused with this scripture. So this is Doctrine and Covenant. There's actually two scriptures, but I'm going to read the shorter one. Doctrine and Covenants 107:76. But a literal descendant of Aaron, so in other words, a Cohen, has a legal right to the presidency of this priesthood, to the keys of this ministry, to act in the office of bishop independently, without counselors, except in a case where a president of the high priesthood, after the order of Melchizedek, is tried to sit as a judge in Israel. So some people will read these two scriptures and think, oh, so if you find a Cohen and you can prove his ancestry, then he can automatically be bishop of your ward, because they inherently have the priesthood. They're not given the priesthood, they're born with it. No, that's not the case. So one of the key, one of the key terms right here, and it has it in both of these scriptures, is the presidency of this priesthood, meaning the Aaronic priesthood, the presidency of the Aaronic priesthood. And it just so happens that that's referring to this, the presiding bishopric of the church. This is like the main site for the presiding bishopric of the church. It says, in addition, the presiding bishopric presides over the Aaronic priesthood in the church. So the scripture is not talking about the ward level or the stake level. It's talking about the entire church in this one position of being the presiding bishop of the church. If there was a Cohen found and he's a member of the church, so he's been baptized and he's received the priesthood, then, and maybe this has already happened and it hasn't been announced. Like when it comes to the church and lineage, usually lineage is kept private, even though we know most people in the church are from Ephraim, or like a very large percentage is from Ephraim. It's supposed to be kind of like a personal, private thing, at least for now. So for all I know, maybe it's already happened. Who knows? They may not broadcast that. But anyway, I have more quotes that really clarify it. I'm not going to go over these right now. There's this interesting story from President Harold B. Lee where a person came in. He's like, I'm a literal descendant of Aaron, and I want to be the bishop. And he's like, oh, well, that's funny. You might want to go read the scriptures again, because it says that just because you're a literal descendant doesn't mean you automatically become the presiding bishop of the church. You have to be called by the first presidency. The Lord has an order to things. You have to be righteous. You have to be found worthy, and you have to be called by the first presidency. So, okay, so the other part of that, so this is talking about the sons of Aaron, but what about the rest of the tribe of Levi? Do they still have the priesthood? The answer is no. I'm not going to go into all that. You can find it, just all you have to do is just think about this. Have you ever heard of a time that somebody who's Jewish is baptized into the church, and then they're asked, oh, okay, you're Jewish. Now, are you of the tribe of Levi? Because if you are, we don't need to give you the priesthood. You already have it. No, of course not. They don't have the priesthood. The priesthood left as soon as Christ and the apostles were killed, priesthood keys were lost, and there was no more passing on of priesthood. there was a dispensational change when Christ came. It was the dispensation of the meridian of time, and he's the one that directed the work and the priesthood. And after his church was established, but then lost all the priesthood for Israel and the Gentiles, it was gone. It was gone. Had to be restored. That's why Peter, James, and John came to restore the Melchizedek priesthood. John the Baptist came and restored the Aaronic priesthood. It hadn't been on the earth since the time of Christ. Now, let's go to this. Okay, so now you might be thinking, well, what about the sons of Levi, again, offering in righteousness? What about that? Maybe that's what the red heifers are about. It's the fulfillment of that prophecy. Well, let's read what Joseph Fielding Smith said in Doctrines of Salvation, Volume 3, pages 93 to 94. Okay, offering of the sons of Levi. What kind of offering will the sons of Levi make to fulfill the words of Malachi and John? Logically, such a sacrifice as they were authorized to make in the days of their former ministry when they were first called. Will such a sacrifice be offered in the temple? Evidently not in any temple, as they are constructed for the work of salvation and exaltation today. It should be remembered that the great temple, which is yet to be built in the city of Zion, will not be one edifice, but 12. And I don't mean to correct him, but it's actually 24. I'll show you that in a minute. I've talked about it a million times on the channel. Some of these temples will be for the lesser priesthood. Let's just go there right now. So again, Joseph Smith Papers, you have the revised city plat for the city of Zion, aka New Jerusalem. And this was going to be the layout. In the middle, you'd have these two blocks, and it would have 24 temples. The ones on the west side would be for the Melchizedek priesthood. The ones on the east side would be for the Aaronic priesthood. And we haven't constructed temples like this as of yet. Probably the most similar one would be the Kirtland Temple, and Kirtland was designated to have 3 temples. There was supposed to be the main temple, or the house of the Lord, and then the house for the first presidency, and then the third building would have been for printing, but they would have been temples. And anyway, in the case of New Jerusalem, you can find this on the original city plat before this revision. It gives you the names of the temples. And I have them here on this spreadsheet just because it's easier to do it this way. And here you have the ones for the Aaronic priesthood over here, such as House of the Lord for the deacons in Zion, helps in government. These ones, so they're like named in groups of 3. Temples or houses of the Lord 16 through 18 is House of the Lord for the teachers in Zion, messenger to the church. And then, you have one for the priests, and then you have one for what I believe is basically the bishop. And then over here you have the first presidency, and then the apostles, and then this one is for, it says the Holy Evangelical House for the high priesthood of the Holy Order of God, which I presume would be for like patriarchs, because that's another name for patriarchs is evangelists. And then this one, these ones, temples 1 through 3 for elders. Okay. So Joseph Fielding Smith is talking about how you have all these temples. They have all just different purposes, but significantly, you have these 12 over here that would be the Aaronic priesthood, and presumably one of them would be used for sacrifices. So he says, it should be remembered that the great temple, which is yet to be built in the city of Zion, will not be one edifice, but 12. Some of these temples will be for the lesser priesthood. Now, this is an important concept as we're talking about the red heifers and the sons of Levi offering again in righteousness. He's talking about New Jerusalem in America. He's not talking about Jerusalem in Israel. Okay? So I think that's a pretty key detail, because if you're expecting that this will be fulfilled in Jerusalem, it doesn't appear that will be the case. It's going to be in New Jerusalem. Okay, continuing. When these temples are built, it is very likely that provision will be made for some ceremonies and ordinances which may be performed by the Aaronic priesthood, and a place provided where the sons of Levi may offer their offering in righteousness. This will have to be the case because all things are to be restored. There were ordinances performed in ancient Israel in the tabernacle when in the wilderness, and after it was established at Shiloh in the land of Canaan, and later in the temple built by Solomon. The Lord has informed us that this was the case and has said that in those edifices, ordinances for the people were performed. These temples that we now have, however, the Lord commanded to be built for the purpose of giving to the saints the blessings which belong to their exaltation, blessings which are to prepare those who receive them to enter into his rest, which rest is the fullness of his glory. And these ordinances have to be performed by authority of the Melchizedek priesthood, which the sons of Levi did not hold. Okay, restoration of blood sacrifices. So now we're getting into, there's always this misunderstanding that there's not going to be any more animal sacrifice, because the idea is, well, Christ was the final sacrifice. Now it's done. The law of Moses is over. It's been fulfilled. But the thing is that animal sacrifice was not exclusive to the law of Moses. It was before the law of Moses. You have Adam that sacrificed all the way down until you have Melchizedek, Abraham, all the way until the law of Moses was instituted. So it's not unique to the law of Moses. Okay, restoration of blood sacrifices. We are living in the dispensation of the fullness of times, into which all things are to be gathered and all things are to be restored since the beginning. Even this earth is to be restored to the condition which prevailed before Adam's transgression. Now, in the nature of things, the law of sacrifice will have to be restored, or all things which were decreed by the Lord would not be restored. It will be necessary, therefore, for the sons of Levi, who offered the blood sacrifice anciently in Israel, to offer such a sacrifice again to round out and complete this ordinance in this dispensation. Sacrifice by the shedding of blood was instituted in the days of Adam, and of necessity will have to be restored. The sacrifice of animals will be done to complete the restoration when the temple spoken of is built, meaning the temple or temples in New Jerusalem in Jackson County, Missouri. At the beginning of the millennium, so it may not even happen before the second coming. The sacrifice of animals will be done to complete the restoration when the temple spoken of is built at the beginning of the millennium or in the restoration. So it seems like it could happen either before or after, but if you're thinking, no, it has to happen first, no, it doesn't. Blood sacrifices will be performed long enough to complete the fullness of the restoration in this dispensation. Afterwards, sacrifice will be of some other character. So it's not going to remain animals. Maybe it'll move on to just like first fruits and Pentecost, like how it wasn't just animals that were brought for sacrifice, but also crops. So maybe it'd be something like that. As far as animal sacrifice goes, I have not a million, but I have a bunch of quotes. 2 from Joseph Smith himself, 2 from Brigham Young, the one that we just read from Joseph Fielding Smith, and it's also reiterated in the Doctrine and Covenants student manual. So it's not their opinion. It is the doctrine of the church. And there's an interesting place where it shows how I think it was for the Salt Lake Temple. As they were planning it, they were thinking, okay, maybe we'll have a space over here for the sacrifices. Now that didn't actually happen. We have the Salt Lake Temple as we know it, but you can find it here. This is the reference, and this is Brigham Young. When we see a temple built right, there will be a place for the priests to enter and put on their robes and offer up sacrifices, first for themselves and then for the people. So that's not something that we see today. Actually, I don't think that was the one. Maybe, no, it's this one. Sorry. This is under the Wilford Woodruff. Where can you find this? This is on, catalog, churchofjesuschrist.org. So you can come to my spreadsheet anytime. The link is in the description box below. Come to quotes A through Z, animal sacrifice, restoration of, and this is Brigham Young. Under the pulpit in the west end will be a place to offer sacrifices. There will be an altar prepared for that purpose, so that when any sacrifices are to be offered, they should be offered there. So they were planning on it, but now's not the time. And then lastly, when we're thinking about the temple in Jerusalem, because again, we're talking about the Red Heifers and how that's necessary before the temple can be built in Jerusalem, in Judaism. Well, that's not the case with us. Let me just skip down here. This is from Bruce R. McConkie, The Millennial Messiah, pages 278 to 280. I'm just going to read this part right here. Who shall build this temple? The Lord himself shall do it by the hands of his servants, the prophets. Behold, the man whose name is the branch, he shall build the temple of the Lord, and be it remembered, the branch is one of the messianic designations by which the promised Messiah is known. Even he shall build the temple of the Lord, and he shall bear the glory, and shall sit and rule upon his throne. And whence shall the workmen come to build the sanctuary? They that are far off shall come and build the temple of the Lord. Who are those that are far off, who shall come to Jerusalem to build the house of the Lord? Surely they are the Jews who have been scattered afar. By what power and under whose authorization shall the work be done? There is only one place under the whole heavens where the keys of temple building are found. There's only one people who know how to build temples and what to do in them when they are completed. That people is the Latter-day Saints. The temple in Jerusalem will not be built by Jews who have assembled there for political purposes as at present. And then later he says, the temple in Jerusalem will be built by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They that are afar off, they that come from an American Zion, they who have a temple in Salt Lake City will come to Jerusalem to build there another holy house in the Jerusalem portion of the mountains of the Lord's house. And earlier he says, he's talking about the location of where it's going to be built. And he says, and thus was it to be in Jerusalem until the promised day when a new temple should arise, perhaps on the very site of the old one. So I don't think it absolutely has to be on the Temple Mount. And that's why I always think about the BYU Jerusalem Center. I've done a billion videos about it. Just do a search for BYU Jerusalem Center on my channel. Go to the homepage, search for it, and you'll see everything that I've said about it. But I think that things happen in natural ways. And we know that not all temples have to be like the temples that we have today with celestial rooms and ordinance rooms, sealing rooms, baptistries. That is like the standard for right now because we're focused on the work of exaltation. But the Kirtland Temple wasn't set up that way. The temples of New Jerusalem, it doesn't seem like all of them were going to be like that at all. I think there's other type of temples that will exist in the millennium. And I think that the BYU Jerusalem Center can be like a administrative type temple. One that when Christ comes, he can rule and reign from there. And then maybe later on, there will be a temple built on the Temple Mount. But we'll just have to wait and see how that goes. Okay, well, that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. Like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.